The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
It is, as my buddy Zabe says, a kaleidoscope league, isn't it? The way it looks one week is not necessarily the way it looks the following week. And yes, it's only one win. Yes, the Patriots are bad. They're a 2-win team. But with a win, the Commanders are in it. It's really remarkable. And knock wood, or knock Formica, here in our studios on Jennifer Street, they're healthy. They're in really good shape. I mean, you look around the league and you see all the injuries. What have they had? They haven't had much of anything at all. And the starting quarterback has not missed a snap. Where if you look around the league, I mean, yeah, Minnesota's ahead of them, and Minnesota won yesterday with Joshua Dobbs, who had been traded by Arizona on Tuesday, didn't even practice with the team, managed to lead them to a victory over the Falcons, who, by the way, were starting Taylor Heineke at home, and they won that game. So as you look at the landscape and you look at who's ahead of them for wild card spots, you're looking at teams like Minnesota, which don't have a quarterback right now. Kirk Cousins is out for the year with a torn Achilles. And you also look, you could look at the Falcons, too. They have the same record as the Commanders, and the Commanders beat them. So if there's any, head-to-head on that. Cowboys are ahead of them, but they're incredibly self-destructive. Do you see the end of that game against Philadelphia yesterday? Whew, what a mess. So, if they win at Seattle next week, and they're 6-point underdogs there, but for some reason, outside of the 2 playoff games that they lost there with Joe Gibbs, they are 7-1 regular season at Seattle. I remember the game in 2017. Kirk Cousins is introducing himself to some new offensive linemen in the morning, and in the afternoon, they go out and beat the Seahawks at Seattle. So, Seattle is certainly part of the mix, and they probably will get a wild card spot. They're 5-3, so they got 2 fewer losses than Washington. I would think Dallas will certainly get a wild card. And then, what else is there? Atlanta, I don't think so. Tampa, no. Minnesota, maybe. But again, you're playing with backup quarterbacks. Maybe Josh Dobbs the rest of the way. Green Bay may get back in it at 3-5, but there's a lot of question about Jordan Love. And, I would think Seattle might be their main competition. And if they win that, then you go to the head-to-head at the end of the year. And, Rams are still – they're not dead yet. They're 3-6. They're lurking out there, and Washington will play them as well later in the season. So I don't want to talk playoffs, but I do want to talk playoffs because that's really where they are right now. And, after what happened in the awful games that they played, losing to Chicago, and Chicago lost again over the weekend. They battled Philadelphia close, but, what does close count for? Not much. But, it's it's quite a different outlook. And as I expected, it was not crushing that they didn't have Montez Sweat on the team anymore, or Chase Young gone. I don't think either one of them made a difference. We didn't see Chase yet. Montez got paid, if you missed this over the weekend. Bears gave him an enormous contract, and he suited up for them yesterday, but they lost. And the team played well yesterday, and really the play of the game, not that it decided the game, and the Patriots got only a field goal out of it, but it's being talked about around the league, maybe more so than a normal play, in that K.J. Henry, who's a rookie, barely has had a chance to get on the field because of Sweat and Young, now playing, and he had a sack in the third quarter that looked textbook sack. I mean, he tackled Mac Jones like you're taught to do in Pee Wee League. He tackled him from behind and dropped him to the ground. No, roughing the passer. And the ruling for the referee was, he dropped all his body weight on him. He should have rolled as he was taking him down. Oh, come on. Really? Guy's making his first NFL sack, and he's supposed to think about technique and rolling when he's doing that? And it didn't look like he slammed him to the ground. I mean, this goes back, it's 20 years or more, but Tony Saragusa had a sack in a playoff game against the Raiders. And he threw his whole body weight and knocked the quarterback out of the game. And so now everybody is looking at plays like that and saying you got to protect the quarterback. And we'll deal with this a little bit more later on. But Ron Rivera didn't want to say anything for two reasons. One, he doesn't want to get it fined, and more than likely he's going to be out of work next year, so you're going to save your dollars. And number two, he's on the competition committee, so he's partially responsible for this, and he was kind of tongue-tied when asked about it, and we'll get to that. But after the win yesterday, and after they have put themselves back in the conversation as a playoff team, this was Ron Rivera in the victory locker room.
I told you guys, I know something that you all should know. You guys are a pretty good football team. You guys have an opportunity to do things, okay, in spite of yourselves. In spite of yourselves. We got to be better with our discipline, be better with controlling and handling the football. Understand that. We got to protect it. And we can't miss little details, guys. Allow explosives on defense. Y'all played your ass off, except in one play. That's the truth of the matter. Y'all really did. Offense, we moved the ball. We controlled it the way we're supposed to, except in a couple of things. Protect the football. Protect the football. Those things give you the opportunity to win games. Continue to work hard, guys. And again, remember the mindset. Keep the mindset where it needs to be. That's about the focus is doing the little details to win football games, right?
Yeah, the one play he's talking about on defense was the Stevenson 64-yard touchdown run. They gave up just over 100 yards rushing, the majority of it on that play. So they had some missed assignments yesterday. They did have the 2 turnovers, and the interception at the end of the half by Hal was egregious, and he took all the blame for it, took all the heat for it after the game. But that was really one of the dumbest things we've seen him do, but that goes along with the development of this quarterback. And I'll spend some more time in about 15 minutes going over some of that and what people are saying in the locker room about his leadership and decisions like that one, but decisions that were good ones yesterday as well. Jonathan Allen, who is the elder statesman now, he's been here seemingly forever. I think he came in 2017, and he's the one who had that big, blow up couple of games ago and maybe inspired something, but here was his take as to what they did after dealing away 2 of his line mates this past week, and how defensively they really didn't let down on the road.
One thing I've learned from Coach Saban in Alabama is you never make a game bigger than what it is. It's the NFL and it's a business. I'm happy that Sweat went and gotten so much money. He deserves it. And I'm assuming Chase is going to be next. So it's a business, man. At the end of the day, Sweat's going to be able to take care of his family for the rest of his life, and soon Chase will too. So I'm happy for them, but at the end of the day, we got a job to do.
Yeah, and that seems to be the attitude. Terry McLaurin, he's, I guess, the elder statesman on offense. He's been here all the way since 2019. His feelings similar.
It's a testament to the guys that we have in the locker room. We got a resilient group who's extremely focused on the task at hand. Obviously, we've had a lot of things that go on out of our control, but I think what we control is the way we come to practice each and every day. I think we had a really great week of practice, and today we really made the plays when we had to help win the game. So when you get that dirt off your shoulders and you get a win, it gets the morale going. It gets you guys feeling a lot better, and going into a tough environment next week in Seattle, we're going to definitely need that momentum. So again, I think we're going to try to do a better job of being better in critical situations, so we can not necessarily put as much pressure on the other side of the ball. But I think it was a great team win overall.
Yeah, 5 losses in 6 games. The Giants game particularly ugly. And just to illustrate the circumstances that are common around the league with quarterbacks, again, keep your fingers crossed on Sam Howell, who has yet to miss a play. But Tyrod Taylor is on injured reserve for the Giants. I don't know whether he can come back this year or not. But Daniel Jones yesterday, in their ugly, ugly loss to the Raiders, who have been a mess, and I'll get to the Raiders in just a second, they lost Daniel Jones with what looks like a torn ACL, so he's going to be out for the rest of the year. And right now, their starting quarterback is Tommy DeVito, who could barely throw the ball. I mean, that's a mess, and it may be so bad that Carson Wentz is finally going to find his way back in the league. There's only so many quarterbacks, and this is going to get even worse when they go to 18 games. I've been saying this, that we're going to have a Super Bowl where there are going to be 2 starting quarterbacks, neither of whom were drafted at the beginning of the year or on the roster at the beginning of the year. These will be street free agents starting the Super Bowl and even, when they go out of their way to protect the quarterbacks. You know, look, you've heard people say put a dress on him. When you got KJ Henry on a textbook sack getting called for roughing the passer, yet you have all these injuries that happen not necessarily because a player is hit. Kirk Cousins wasn't hit when he tore his Achilles. Aaron Rodgers wasn't hit when he tore his Achilles. And I don't know what you're going to do about it. And each of them was on different surfaces. Rodgers got hurt on artificial turf. Cousins got hurt at Lambeau Field on a grass field. So it's just mind-boggling what happens with quarterbacks. And again, going to get worse when they go to an 18-game schedule. Let me deal with this here, and then I'll get to some of the numbers from yesterday. This notion that Bill Belichick is going to leave the Patriots and come to Washington seemingly is ridiculous because on top of the fact that he's really bad now, his team is terrible, and it does appear that he's not the coach that he was, or maybe he was the biggest fraud ever in that we had this big Belichick-Brady debate, and maybe Brady, who's considered to be the greatest of all time, is underrated, that he was that good to cover up for the deficiencies. He never had, outside of Randy Moss, a great wide receiver. He had a lot of little guys who were like converted quarterbacks from small schools like Julian Edelman. You know, those were his guys. And he won 6 Super Bowls with those teams, and most of us thought, well, you know, it's a joint effort, Belichick and Brady. No, might be just all Brady. And outside of Brady, he's won 1 playoff game, and that was with Vinny Testaverde when he was coaching in Cleveland. Other than that, Belichick, when he's been to the playoffs with another quarterback, has lost, and he's missed a bunch of playoffs without Brady. So it could be that. Now, as far as, you know, who would want Belichick, I'm sure there are teams that would still want him if he were on the open market, and he's not on the open market because he has a contract. So if you want him, you'd have to deal for him, much like the Raiders did with, or rather Tampa Bay did with John Gruden. When they made a trade with the Raiders to get John Gruden, that you would have to give something up. I mean, I wouldn't want him here, but this is Mike Sando of The Athletic. He covers the NFL, and he was on the Rich Eisen show last week discussing this possibility as, yeah, it's not as far-fetched as you might think.
If we're playing this game, where's a place that you think is likely to change no matter what happens the rest of the season, right? And then who's a new owner that could really use some juice and credibility in the league and some guidance of how to do this stuff, right? It would probably be Washington. They could use somebody like that. So I think there's some logic to that if we're just spitballing. And look, a lot of things would have to happen. He'd have to leave New England and want to coach and all of that. But that's kind of crossed my mind as something that could make sense for everybody. Historic franchise, looking for a fresh start with new owner who's looking for some credibility. It would certainly get a lot of people excited there, and might make sense.
Not really. That's Mike Sando of The Athletic, and I think he's misreading what goes on here. I don't think that would create excitement, especially after what we saw yesterday. I don't think fans would be happy to see Bill Belichick here. Plus, he's a jerk, and they're still in the PR mode now. They gotta endear themselves back to the fan base after it was destroyed by Dan Snyder. So you're not going to bring in this grumbling guy who thinks, you know, whatever I do is okay and it's my way, and he's going to have to pick all the players. No. It's not going to happen. And the Vince Lombardi comparison, that's such a different time. And you got to remember this. Vince Lombardi came to Washington because Edward Bennett Williams gave him a piece of the team. He gave him a small percentage of the team, which he was not getting in Green Bay. And Lombardi was bored after not coaching for a year. He had been burned out in Green Bay. He was still in his mid-50s and came to Washington to get recharged as a coach and also to make a lot of money relative to the time, not just salary, but a piece of the team. That's not going to happen here with Belichick, and I don't think it would energize the fan base, and I don't think that after they fire Ron Rivera, and they more than likely will, barring, you know, the crazy run to the NFC Championship game or something like that, I don't think people get excited, but it's still in the wind. I'm kind of surprised. But that was Friday. That was before what happened yesterday, but I don't think it would change Sando's mind that much. But I really don't see any possibility of him coming here, but you never know. You never know what could happen here. And when, you know, very successful people get together and they talk and they hear things that they want to hear, who knows? Maybe there is a dinner between Bill Belichick and Josh Harris at some point in the offseason, but I don't think it's going to happen. Some of the good numbers from yesterday, and very quietly, Hal is moving up the charts in terms of passing. He's putting together week after week big numbers, and yesterday he did have that really bad interception before the end of the first half, just before the end of the first half, but his numbers were very good yesterday. Hal, yesterday, 29 of 45, 325 yards with the one interception. And he had that really great 23-yard run picked up the first down at 3rd and 23 prior to throwing an interception. So he's making plays with his legs and with his head up down the field, and he's really being able to keep control even when things go bad. And you'll hear a little bit later on Ron Rivera talk about the ability to brush things off. And that is another big thing in playing quarterback in the league, and another thing as part of his development. On 3rd down yesterday, and this is huge because they've been really bad defensively on this and not so good offensively. New England yesterday was 3 for 12 on 3rd down. So that was huge. And Washington was 9 of 17. Now, I have to look at the play-by-play to get all the numbers, but I'm guessing of those 9 3rd down conversions, 9 for 17, 6 of them were 3rd and 8 or longer. It was just time after time, and that's huge. To be able to make a big play and keep a drive alive when it looks like, it's a almost certain punting situation. Good for Sam Howell for doing this. And, again, he's now made 10 starts. That's infancy for a quarterback. And for all the good things that we saw yesterday, including picking up that first down on 3rd and 23, including what turned out to be a tremendous touchdown pass to Jahan Dotson, where they beat the zero blitz to get the touchdown in the end zone, and seeing things like that. Those things are big. He's going to continue to make boneheaded plays. It's just something you're going to have to live with, and the question is, how long do they ride it out? But what you're hearing from the locker room, from players and coaches is, yeah, we got our guy. We finally got our guy. And I'll go through the quarterback numbers coming up here. Wait till you hear the calling of the roll since 2018, who has played quarterback and how many games, and where Sam Howell ranks after only 10 starts as a Commander. We'll get to that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Hey, how about this weather, right? We're supposed to get cold? No, we're going to hit 70s again this week. 65 today. Maybe next weekend it gets a little bit cooler, but we're in November now, and we'll take it. We'll take it. Tony's coming up at 11 o'clock. And he said he's had to shut down his golf game, but who knows? Maybe he got to play in the nice weather, especially yesterday. Also, in the next hour, I want to talk about Maryland. I watched about as much as I could stand of the Penn State game on Saturday. They got rocked 51-15, and Mike Locksley said, yeah, Penn State's good, but they're not 51-15 better. Well, they were on Saturday, and the program that you said was ready to contend for the Big Ten championship clearly is not, and they're going to have a tough time getting bowl eligible. I'm surprised that they're favored at Nebraska on Saturday. That's a noon kickoff, and Nebraska's in the same boat. They got 5 wins trying to get bowl eligible, and what started out as a year of grandeur when they were 5-0, Maryland has now lost 4 straight games, 0 for October, and so far 0 for November. So we'll hear from Mike Locksley coming up. So you know that after Kirk Cousins was allowed to walk after the 2017 season, after they had given him back-to-back franchise tags, and he left, they went and they traded for Alex Smith. And the Alex Smith era started off well. They were 6-3. And then he suffered the gruesome broken leg, followed by the gruesome recovery where he was lucky to keep his leg and miraculously came back to make 6 starts 2 years later. But essentially, his run in Washington ended 10 games in when he suffered that broken leg against Houston. He gave way to Josh Johnson, who played 3 games, Colt McCoy, who started 2, Mark Sanchez, who started 1. 2019, Case Keenum, 8 starts, Dwayne Haskins, the rookie then, 7, Colt McCoy, 1. Ron Rivera comes in 2020. Alex Smith amazingly, comes back. 6 starts. Dwayne Haskins, 6 starts, 2 by necessity after he was benched after starting the first 4. Kyle Allen started 4. 2021, Ryan Fitzpatrick lasted 16 plays. He gave way to Taylor Heineke for 15 starts. And when Heineke had COVID, Garrett Gilbert got 1 start. 2022, Taylor Heineke, 9 starts after Carson Wentz broke his finger after, I think, 5 starts. Wentz came back, was bad, got benched again, and Sam Howell started the last game of the year, and Howell now has 9 starts. By starting 10 games in his Washington career, Sam Howell now ranks 4th among that group of starting quarterbacks since 2018. Heineke, 24 starts, Alex Smith, 16 starts, Dwayne Haskins, 13 starts, Sam Howell now 10. Keenum had 8, Wentz had 7, Colt McCoy and Allen had 4, Josh Johnson had 3, won one of them. Mark Sanchez, he of the butt fumble, had 1, and Garrett Gilbert had 1. 13 different starting quarterbacks since 2018. And because of that, we're all hesitant to say, I think they got their quarterback. Remember last year where Dan Snyder was talking to the gambling board before the start of the season to get a gambling license at FedEx Field, and he said, well, we got ourselves our quarterback. No, you don't. Carson Wentz not only wasn't the quarterback last year, he's nobody's quarterback this year. Can't get a job anywhere. This was Rivera yesterday after watching Howell's performance, throwing for 325 yards and the beautiful touchdown pass where he hit Jahan Dotson. He and if you've been listening, by the way, if you've been listening to Ron Rivera, any question that he's asked, he diverts the attention to Sam Howell. Yeah, but we're developing Sam Howell. Yesterday, not quite as effusive with his praise, but generally liking what he saw out of his quarterback.
Well, with the exception of the interception in the first half, I thought he played the type of game that we believe he is capable of. He made some really good decisions, some smart things. I mean, there are some things that he's going to want to have back once he gets a chance to look at the tape and we get a chance to really evaluate it. But, again, we got to make sure that we put those guys in position to have the success that, we can have. And again, we're still, growing and developing with the guy, but he did a great job for us and, led us to the victory.
Now, here's one thing that Rivera really liked, and I think this is really important for a quarterback. You hear that about corners, that they have to have a short memory, that they have to be able to brush things off, and it's the same for a quarterback, especially a rookie quarterback. And this was Rivera on how Howell reacted to throwing that soul-crushing interception at the end of the first half.
He's resilient. He was so disappointed himself on the interception, and we went into the locker room, and you could still see he was upset with himself. And Jacoby was right there with him, and I went over and said a little something quickly, and then he had a little grin on his face, so I knew he was going to get over it quickly and come back out and play.
Yeah, they talked to Brissett after the game, and he said in those situations, some people can tense up and be like, I did something wrong. And I think he did the total opposite. He was just like, whatever, play's over now. So I was happy to see that. So everybody's very impressed with his ability to turn the page. You've been hearing players like Charles Leno talk about that throughout the season, that no matter how badly things go, he's ready to move on to the next play. The other thing that Rivera really likes, and yes, that was a dumb decision to throw that interception, but this is what he's getting better at, making the right call, taking off and running when he needs to, not running, picking up the second option, not focusing on. This is one of the biggest problems, probably the biggest problem that a young quarterback has, is that he focuses in on the guy he's going to throw to before the snap, and he throws it to him whether he's open or not. And Howell, while he had those 4 interceptions against Buffalo, has done a pretty good job of not turning over the ball, aside from when he makes a dumb play like yesterday. So in total, this is how Rivera looks at the decision-making.
You could see his decision-making was really on cue. And I think being able to see the whole field and keeping your eyes up, that's probably the biggest thing, John, that you see is that his eyes are up. So when he steps into the pocket, he's not looking around as much as he's looking downfield. And that's one of the big keys I know that EB talks about all the time.
Yeah, so that ability to shake it off and to, look down when the first guy is covered and keep running while you're trying to extend a play and taking the ball down the field, that has been huge for him. And that has really made a difference, especially in recent weeks where he's cut down on the interceptions. So that's been big. Reaction from the locker room. And I think this is really interesting to listen to the players. This is Jonathan Allen. And I just went through the 13 different starting quarterbacks that they've had since 2018. Allen's been through all of them, from Alex Smith to Taylor Heineke to Carson Wentz to Colt McCoy to even Josh Johnson. So you would think, after seeing all that has gone on since 2018, that you wouldn't necessarily hear something like this from John Allen. Because fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Let's not get caught up in this guy for too long, because, there was a period of time where Dwayne Haskins was the first-round draft pick who they hoped was going to develop, and there were some signs he'd have a pretty good game or two, and you'd start to think, okay, maybe. Even Wentz was terrible in his last start against Cleveland, but overall, there are a couple of games in there where you go, okay, maybe he's a veteran, maybe he's going to regain the form that he had when he was an MVP candidate at Philadelphia. So you'd think, of all people, Jonathan Allen would be saying, well, let's see the rest of the story, or let's see a few more chapters. Now, this is John Allen on what he's seeing not from Carson Wentz, what he's seeing from Sam Howell.
Sam Howell is he's our future. He's our quarterback, and I think we find our next quarterback for the 5-10 years, and I truly believe that.
Why so?
When I look at the plays he makes on the field, and not only does he make great plays on the field, his demeanor after bad plays and not playing well, he's all able to bounce back. And I've seen a lot of great quarterbacks in my time, played against a lot of them, and I think he has the potential to be one of them. So I can truly say this team is behind Sam Howell 100%.
Yeah. See, these are statements that you haven't heard before, and I don't think you ever heard that about Dwayne Haskins. So I think that's important. Now, Jahan Dotson has only been here for 2 years. But he echoes what players are saying on offense.
He makes big plays when we need them the most, truly. I just remember that long third down conversion run. That was big for us, man. We needed that. Just big-time throws that he makes. He does it all for us, and we're super happy to have a guy like him at quarterback leading our offense.
Well, how about that? Now, this is Hal. This was at the end of his news conference yesterday. And, Hal, fifth-round draft pick, he has had to prove himself. He sat almost all of last year. He's had performances this year where you might think about putting him on the bench. I thought the way he was playing against Buffalo that there was a possibility they were going to bench him, even against Chicago, that might happen. But they've stuck with him. And his confidence in himself, I think, is important to note. This, again, is Hal on how he looks at his long-term future.
I want to be the quarterback here for a really long time. But, at the end of the day, how I'm going to get to that point is, taking it one day at a time and doing everything that I can on a day-to-day basis. And, that's kind of the way I look at it. I never worry about the future. I take it one day at a time, and I try to give every single day everything I got. I give my teammates, I give this organization every single thing that I have every single day. And then, that's what I'll continue to try to do.
All right. So you got to like that. I think, and even as a fan, even having watched since 2018 and the 13 different starting quarterbacks that they've had and the nightmarish performances by people like Mark Sanchez and Garrett Gilbert, who was probably out of the league for 2 years and had barely played, all that. So even with all that, you're almost ready to embrace Sam Howell. And what's going to be interesting is what happens in the offseason. Now, it's a quarterback-rich draft. It would seem you'd still want to take somebody. You may not want to move up into the top 5 if you're not there to try and get somebody like that. But I think you're still going to have another quarterback, and you're going to have to develop somebody else. Jacoby Brissett is going to be on to somebody else next year, and you'll have that type of veteran quarterback here. But I think they're still going to have to try and get another guy just in case. But 5th round, didn't think we'd get this far. Had seen some things from Sam Howell in the last 10 starts that he's made where you don't necessarily buy in. But right now you're feeling pretty good about it. That could change. He could get clobbered next week in Seattle. He's got 2 games against Dallas. Thanksgiving could be a nightmare. Who knows? But right now, off what you saw yesterday and what you're hearing now, that's why I'm playing these comments from the locker room. What you're hearing is they're solidly behind him. Now, Giants yesterday. This is really remarkable. How bad things were apparently with Josh McDaniels. For the Raiders to go through the week that they had and to come out and totally destroy the Giants 30-6. This is a team that was supposed to be in the playoffs again this year. Brian Daboll had come in and had done a good job, and you'd say, okay, finally, you get a Belichick assistant who knows, what he's doing and had turned that team into a really good football team. And you had also developed Daniel Jones to the point where you gave him a quarterback worthy, a contract worthy of a franchise quarterback. Now Daniel Jones may miss the rest of the year with a torn ACL, and they are now down to not Danny DeVito, but Tommy DeVito. And Tyrod Taylor's on the injured list, so they're going to have to go shopping on the street to just find anybody who can play quarterback because they just don't have anybody. And DeVito, you may have to roll with him. Boy, that looks like a mess. Now, the Raiders, this came out yesterday. Part of the reason that they got rid of Josh McDaniels is that there was a meeting where players, and this almost never happens, but the players were allowed to vent their frustration at McDaniels and GM Dave Ziegler, who also got fired in all of this. And, Al Davis's kid, Mark Davis, is paying something like $85 million in dead coaching contracts and front office contracts. And according to the NFL Network's Ian Rappaport, they had an open floor meeting with the players, and they said they talked to sources inside the building, and it was not surprising that McDaniels got fired because the players just tore him apart. And they said he was at the practice and he seemed detached. They had a practice a couple hours later, described as not himself, distant, let plays happen instead of correcting. Players felt he was there in body but not in the spirit. Essentially, based on sources they spoke with, it broke him. Ian Rappaport also said that sources pointed to this incident as one of the key moments for McDaniels that showed that it was over between the coach and the Raiders. And, wow. So McDaniels, failed at Denver, and he fails with the Raiders and didn't last 2 full seasons in either place, and I don't think he's going to get a shot again. Now, Antonio Pierce is the interim coach, and I assume that he's going to coach the rest of the season and led them to victory yesterday. Phil Mushnick had this in his column. If you don't remember this, now Antonio Pierce was here, and he played well, and he was a player they wanted to keep, and I don't think Joe Gibbs understood the salary cap well enough, and Pierce was allowed to go, and he signed with the Giants. They went to the Super Bowl in January of 2008, and at the time, Antonio Pierce was 30 years old, playing linebacker for the Giants. He had abandoned his 2 pit bulls at his New Jersey home to take care of themselves, food and all. Only when neighbors alerted cops that his 2 pit bulls were on the loose and unattended at his home did animal control arrive to learn that neither had been vaccinated against rabies, and one was sick and undernourished. Pierce pleaded guilty to animal neglect and paid a $1,300 fine. At the time the Giants were playing in the Super Bowl against the Patriots, Pierce was making nearly $5 million a year, apparently not enough money to pay for somebody to look after his dogs. Later that year, and I'd forgotten about this as well, later that year, Pierce was with teammate Plexico Burress at a nightclub early one Saturday morning, so this was Friday going into Saturday. They were due to fly to Washington for the game against the then Redskins later in the day. So this is the early morning hours of Saturday morning. Burress had a .40 caliber Glock that he was carrying in his sweatpants that he didn't want anybody to see, and it accidentally went off. He shot himself. And here's what Pierce did, the responsible now head coach of the Raiders. He didn't call for an ambulance, immediate medical attention for Burress, but chose to drive him to the hospital where Burress was registered under a phony name. Then Pierce reportedly left the hospital with Burress's gun stashed in his car. The doctor who treated Burress would be suspended for failure to report a gunshot wound. Days later, according to reports, the cops had to find Pierce, not vice versa, in search of that gun. And, of course, they had a game later that day in Washington, which essentially, ended the career of Plexico. He had to go to jail. He was at the top of his game then. He made the winning catch in the Super Bowl in the year before or the January before, and then he has to go to jail for having a gun go off at a nightclub. And Pierce was an accessory in that. I mean, right? You call an ambulance, even if it's not your fault that the gun went off in Plexico's pants. But that's not what happened. So there's your Raiders head coach. Now, I don't think they go to the Belichick tree anymore. Maybe Belichick himself. But be interesting to see what he does the rest of the year and whether he gets a long-term contract from Mark Davis. Davis may not be able to afford anything else because all the money he's paying to coaches that aren't coaching anymore. But Plexico Burress and Antonio Pierce as buddies, that doesn't make for a good look as a head coach of an NFL team. Next hour, more comments from Ron Rivera and Sam Howell about yesterday's win and where they are as a football team. We'll take a look at the Maryland football situation as well. Tony's coming up at 11. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. Yakking a lot about the Commanders' win yesterday. Okay, New England's bad. Mac Jones stinks. Bill Belichick, once considered the greatest ever, maybe still isn't anymore. But it's a win. And the crazy thing about the way the NFL works, even though it's only 17 games, what happens week to week changes the outlook entirely. So Washington, and this is key for them, they're a healthy football team. They are a healthy team. They're 4-5, and they've got a quarterback. And Atlanta, who they beat, has the same record as they're competing with them for a wild card spot. And they started Taylor Heineke yesterday, and they lost at home to the Minnesota Vikings, who were forced to play a quarterback in Josh Dobbs, who hadn't even practiced with him. He was acquired on Tuesday from Arizona, coming in after Kirk Cousins blew out his Achilles. And he wound up leading them to victory. And there's not even an assurance from Coach Arthur Smith that Heineke is going to be the quarterback the rest of the way, may go back to Desmond Ridder. So they got uncertainty there. I just told you what Minnesota's got, and Minnesota's ahead of them at 5-4 in the wild card standings. The jury's out on Jordan Love, though the Packers did beat the Rams yesterday, but they're 3-5 on the year. And, yes, the Cowboys, I'm sure, will get a wild card spot, and probably Seattle will get a wild card spot. But, Washington goes there on Sunday, and if they knock off Seattle, and they're 7-1 there all time during the regular season, they lost 2 playoff games at Seattle during the Joe Gibbs era, but Gibbs too. But they generally win there. And the game that was played there in 2017 was remarkable. Cousins last year in Washington. And they had so many injuries on the offensive line that the morning of the game, they've got guys who they've brought in, and they're being introduced to Kirk Cousins, and they're starting that day. And he managed to win the game. That's, going back 6 years, but that's the last time they played there, and they go there again Sunday. And look how bad Seattle looked yesterday. I know it's on the road, and I know Baltimore's really good, but are they 37-3 better than Seattle? If they are, Washington's got a shot to win the game. And I think the big thing that we're seeing, and Ron Rivera keeps pushing this because this is all he has to push right now, is, okay, we're watching the development of the quarterback. We finally got one here. 13 different starting quarterbacks since 2018. And with 10 starts, you got Sam Howell at number 4 on the list. The Alex Smith broken leg, the Dwayne Haskins disaster, and followed by tragedy where he died playing for the Steelers after they cut him before the end of his second year. I mean, just one thing after another, and you finally got somebody here who seems to be that guy and seems to have the right demeanor. Never seems to get too high or too low, and even taking sacks yesterday as he did, he took 3 sacks. He still played well and had a quarterback rating of 84, and even with the really awful interception at the end of the first half. And if he can continue to play like he has the last 2 weeks, I think they've really hit on something with the way they run the offense. Eric Bieniemy's development as a play caller. Be interesting to hear his comments when he talks to the media on Thursday about how far he's come in knowing how to run this offense and the chemistry that he's got going. And, maybe that pushes him even closer to becoming the head coach next year. Who knows? But, anything is in play at this point. And this was Howell yesterday after his passing performance where he threw, by the way, for 325 yards. He was 29 of 45, with the one interception and the beautiful touchdown pass that he threw to Jahan Dotson. His reaction to winning this game yesterday, 20-17.
Just got to find a way to play better at certain times, and obviously the interception was a big play for us. A chance for us to really get the momentum going into halftime, and that's probably one of the worst plays I've ever made in my football career. So definitely just got to not do that in that situation. But yeah, I thought I did some good plays. A lot of guys stepped up and made some big plays down the field. The O-line did a good job all day long. We ran the ball well. We protected well. They brought some blitzes, some cover zeros, and we got through some checks and managed that pretty well. So I thought, as a whole, we did a lot of really good things. We just got to find a way to finish better, and when we have a chance in the fourth quarter to win the game, we got to take advantage of that and not put our defense in so many opportunities. We gave the ball back to them probably 3 times, and our defense came up with a stop every single time, and so just credit to them, and it was just a great team.
Yeah, I think that turning the ball over the last time, before the interception that was thrown in. By the way, Quan Martin with an interception, barely gotten off the bench this year, making an interception to seal the game. Before the Patriots had their last drive, and they had a chance to eat up some more of the clock, and Howell threw this long sideline pass to Dotson that was a low percentage play, and it didn't eat up any time. That was a bad play. That was a bad call, barely bad call by Bieniemy. They should not have done that. But the fact that they did make enough plays to win, played well enough to win the game is important. And this is more from Howell, as he thought, and that was what you heard there was pretty much his opening comment from the news conference. He thought, well, if I deal with the interception right away, they won't continue to ask me about it. But as a matter of fact, reporters weren't done with it as they pursued that angle a little bit more.
I hate that play happened, but it's just I'm not going to let that happen again, and I think my teammates know that, and I told them that. So I'm just going to try to continue to build on the good things that we did. Dang, John. I tried to talk about it earlier, so y'all will just stop at. But nah, it was just obviously in a situation like that, you got to try to throw the ball away, and I was on the perimeter, and it was a rollout pass, and then kind of a guy triggered and tried to come hit me late, and so I was just trying to find an incompletion, and I just didn't get the ball out of bounds.
That's about as animated as you've heard Hal. Dang, John, what are you asking me about the interception? So he just is just one level. Like he's not gonna get too upset. He's not gonna get too excited about anything that he does. Now the touchdown pass, that was a beautiful throw. That happened in the third quarter, and it was against, and this is important, a zero blitz. And the zero blitz means they're bringing everybody, so you're going to have one-on-one coverage down the field. Howell was able to recognize that right away, and throwing a perfect ball 33 yards in the end zone to Dotson. Here's how he saw it.
They were trying to bring cover zero, and for most of the game, our cover zero stuff was getting to some quick screens and stuff like that. So I knew we'd have an opportunity versus cover zero to get into max protection and take a shot down the field. And Jahan did a good job beating his guy. We know it's going to be one-on-one, and there's in cover zero, there's nobody behind him. So I just tried to throw it out there and let him go get it. He did.
Yeah, and this was the reaction from Dotson on catching that touchdown.
Yeah, it was a big play. We needed it. Sam did a great job alerting. He saw cover zero. That's what we got. We've been working it all week. He gave me a chance to make a play for the team, and I was able to capitalize.
Yeah, and look, he what was it, 3 weeks ago that he was pretty much forgotten, maybe 2 weeks ago. I think it was maybe the Giants game where they didn't find him at all, and they lost that game 14-7. Played a little better last week against Philadelphia, and then makes this huge play. And Terry McLaurin, that's the guy I'm looking for on every play. McLaurin did have 5 catches for 73 yards and was slightly overthrown in the end zone, had a chance to catch a pass for a touchdown in the first half. But at least he's spreading the ball around. And 8 different receivers caught passes yesterday, which was huge for Washington. McLaurin caught 5. Antonio Gibson, who, by the way, didn't put the ball on the ground. You did have a fumble by Brian Robinson. Gibson not fumbling yesterday and carried 6 times for 34 yards and also caught 5 passes for 42 yards. So he was very, very effective in both the passing and the running game. Dotson caught the 4 passes for 69 yards, including the touchdown. Logan Thomas, 4 catches for 31. Jamison Crowder, who was a street pickup. They needed somebody to return punts. He's now established himself as the top punt returner, doing a good job on that. He had 5 for 32 yards, and he's also become key in their passing game. Pringle, who is, I don't think he was. Yeah, I think he was an undrafted free agent, if I'm not mistaken. He had 3 catches for 55 yards. Yami Brown caught 2 passes for 33 yards. Robinson caught a pass for 4. And they even threw the ball once to Bates, the tight end, and for a loss. So that's seeing everybody. That's spreading the ball around. That's seeing the field. That was huge yesterday for Sam Howell and throwing the touchdown pass as he did. Now, the other storyline from yesterday is how are they going to respond after what happened, after the trades were made this past week, and what they were able to do as a football team. Because remember, when the trades were made last week, so it's less than a week ago, last Tuesday, most of us sat here on Wednesday and said, well, that's it. The page has been turned. The owner has spoken. It's, get through this year and use the draft picks next year. And maybe it's still going to look like that in a couple of weeks. But right now, it looks like they can win without those guys. And as John Allen put it,
one thing I've learned from Coach Saban in Alabama is you never make a game bigger than what it is. It's the NFL and it's a business. I'm happy that Sweat went and gotten so much money. He deserves it. And I'm assuming Chase is going to be next. So it's a business, man. At the end of the day, Sweat's going to be able to take care of his family for the rest of his life, and soon Chase will too. So I'm happy for them, but at the end of the day, we got a job to do.
Yeah, and this again was Terry McLaurin. His outlook after seeing all these guys traded.
It's a testament to the guys that we have in the locker room. We got a resilient group who's extremely focused on the task at hand. Obviously, we've had a lot of things that go on out of our control, but I think what we control is the way we come to practice each and every day. I think we had a really great week of practice, and today we really made the plays when we had to help win the game. So when you get that dirt off your shoulders and you get a win, it gets the morale going. It gets you guys feeling a lot better. And going into a tough environment next week in Seattle, we're going to definitely need that momentum. So again, I think we're going to try to do a better job of being better in critical situations, so we can not necessarily put as much pressure on the other side of the ball. But I think it was a great team win overall.
Yeah, no question. And still some things to clean up, as he knows.
As an offense, we got to continue to figure out how we can be better in got-to-have-it situations. So when it's 4-minute offense, we would like to finish with the ball in our hands. We don't want to necessarily put our defense back out there. And when we get in the red zone, we got to score touchdowns. So I think as we progress, we got to continue to build on what we did well, but also figure out how we are better in those critical areas.
Okay, so here's what's left. And, it's a week-to-week league. They can lose to anybody. They can beat anybody. 6-point underdogs going to Seattle next week. Then they got the Giants here on November 19th. And as I've been mentioning, we haven't gotten a firm word yet, but it looks like Daniel Jones may have torn his ACL yesterday. You already got Tyrod Taylor on the injured list. It means that Tommy DeVito is going to be their quarterback if he's still upright in a couple of weeks. Who knows? And who knows who they're going to bring in, and who knows if they may have to finally go to Carson Wentz, who can't get a job anywhere. Maybe that's the guy that they're going to bring in, or they'll find somebody else off the street. So that's a mess. Then Cowboys on Thanksgiving Day. And I don't know if you watched the end of the Philly game yesterday. They are unbelievably self-destructive. Now, Philadelphia was trying to self-destruct. They had punted the ball to Dallas with less than a minute to go and basically had to play prevent defense because Dallas had missed on a 2-point conversion on their last possession. So the Cowboys needed a touchdown in that situation. And they were driving, and they were in good position. They had like 24 seconds to go. They were out of timeouts. But they had an opportunity to get the ball in the end zone. And Dak Prescott took a sack. I mean, that was one of the dumbest sacks I have ever seen. Took themselves way back, and the clock, they had to kill the clock because they had no way to stop it without any timeouts. And Philadelphia wound up hanging on. They made a stop at like the 3-yard line and were able to keep the Cowboys out of the end zone. And that was an enormous win for Philadelphia and a really crushing loss for the Cowboys. So Cowboys, they're not well coached with Mike McCarthy. He terrible clock management at the end of the game with that sack and other things that they did. And, there's a possibility. They've won at Dallas in the past. I'm not saying they're going to win on Thanksgiving Day game there. And then the Dolphins are kind of like them. They put up a lot of points, more points than Washington, but they haven't beaten anybody good. And they had an opportunity to win yesterday in the game in Germany against Kansas City, and they failed to get it done. And Tua made a fumble down the stretch, and the Chiefs were able to hang on for a win. So you got the Dolphins coming here. That's a December 3rd game. Then you've got the bye. And nobody wants a bye at the beginning of the season. You look at it, and nobody wants it that late. But given that they're still healthy, and yes, there's games to be played before the bye. There's 4 games left before the bye. But if they go into the bye in relatively good shape, then you're well rested for the stretch, which is at the Jets Christmas Eve. 49ers come here New Year's Eve. And who knows, this game against Dallas, the way things are lining up now, it wouldn't be a shocker if it's either to improve your wild card position or to get into the wild card, or Dallas may be in a spot where they've got nothing to play for. They're already in the playoffs and might not have the opportunity to move up. Losing to Philadelphia certainly hurt yesterday, and Philadelphia very much in the driver's seat in the division. But that could be a game where if it's on the line for Washington to get in, you may be playing a disinterested Cowboys team as they did at the end of last year. And, again, you're seeing the quarterback starting to develop. Don't get overly excited about a win against a bad New England team. But the way the league works, it works in a way that every week there seems to be hope, no matter how bad a start you get off to. And with 17 games, that's changed the outlook as well. Still a lot of games left, 8 games left. It's a lot of football left to play. But after 9, they're not out of it at 4-5. While it looked like they might be out of it after the ugly loss at the Giants and then losing again at home to Philadelphia last week, 1 week changes a lot of things. And now you can start to talk actual playoffs. Hard to believe, but with Seattle losing yesterday, they've sort of dropped back into the pack a little bit, and we'll see what happens with the Rams. Maybe they get back in, but they lost an ugly game yesterday to the Packers. So here we are. It's November, and all we want for Christmas is meaningful football. We may still have it, but again, I think the focus is on next year as well. And what's going to happen with the new coaching staff and hopefully a general manager. Coming up, this roughing call that was made on KJ Henry yesterday. I mean, where are we going with this? And you'll hear kind of a baffled Ron Rivera about it. Wait till you hear the reaction Ron Rivera had to the roughing penalty on KJ Henry yesterday. And also you'll hear from Mike Locksley talking about the Maryland situation with the Terps now losing 4 in a row and desperately needing to win at Nebraska on Saturday to get bowl eligible. We'll talk about that and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Yeah, I got Tony at 11 o'clock. I was just looking back at the 2003 then Redskins because yesterday's win over the Patriots was the first for Washington over New England since 2003. That was week 4 of the season, and the game was at FedEx Field. And you talk about teams that went in opposite directions. That was Steve Spurrier year 2, and that was after he had tried all of his ex-Gators at quarterback. He had Shane Matthews, and he brought in Danny Werfel, and, he thought he could win with those guys. And the following year, Dan Snyder, who was the general manager, Steve Spurrier, I'm just a ball coach. I call the ball plays. So he let Snyder make the call on the roster. And Snyder cut Danny Werfel. Spurrier wasn't happy about that. So when he cut Danny Werfel in training camp, things kind of soured a little bit. But, okay, they opened the season beating the Jets. That was the Thursday night opener. They opened the season. There was 2 teams most affected, 2 cities most affected by 9/11. So you had the Jets playing here, and Washington won the game 16-13. The following week they go to Atlanta, and Atlanta had one of the former Gator quarterbacks. I forget which one it was, but it was a former former quarterback who had played for Spurrier, who had never changed his audible signals from Florida. So he knew what was coming. And Spurrier said, yeah, we had to change the signals at halftime. They knew what was going on. But they managed to win the game 33-31. They go home to play the Giants the following week. Giants won in overtime 24-21. So they're doing okay. They're 2-1 on the season. And here come the defending champion New England Patriots. And incredibly, the Redskins with Steve Spurrier won that game 20-17 to get to 3-1 on the year. Now remember, with Danny Werfel and Shane Matthews the year before, they finished 7-9. You know, that was Spurrier trying to win with his old Gators, and they weren't NFL caliber players, but they managed to go 7-9. So the following year, where they're 3-1, you go, ooh, maybe, who knows? Then they lost at Philadelphia. They lost at home to Tampa. They lost at Buffalo. They had the bye. They lost at Dallas. They lost to Seattle at home. So, they beat Seattle. So now that's they're 4-5, same where they are now. They lost at Carolina. They lost at Miami. They lost to New Orleans at home. They beat the Giants in New York 20-7, but then they came home to play the Cowboys. And that was one, I remember it was miserably cold. It was one of the worst games I ever saw. Tim Hasselbeck had a quarterback rating of 0.0. It was just awful. And Spurrier expected Dallas to blitz on every down. They didn't blitz him, and it threw him off. So they lost the game deservedly 27-0. They lost to the Bears the following week. And then there was speculation as to what was going to happen with Spurrier in his future. And Spurrier kept telling everybody, my intention is to come back. So they play the final game of the year. It's on a Saturday night. They lose to Philadelphia 31-7. So they finish the year 5-11. Spurrier holds a news conference the next day. It's advertised as, okay, it's an end-of-season news conference. It's going to be questioned. Nope. Just a statement from Spurrier. Wound up 5-11. Not too good. Better than some teams, but not as good as most. And that was it. He disappeared. So that was a Sunday. And I think it was Tuesday where he resigned from the golf course. And that was it. And that's what brought back Joe Gibbs. Meantime, the Patriots, who lost that fourth game of the year to the Redskins 20-17, they didn't lose again until the following season. They went to the Super Bowl, which that year was in Jacksonville, and they beat the Eagles. That was the Donovan McNabb Super Bowl where he, was either throwing up in the huddle or froze up or whatever. But T.O. was great, caught 12 passes, but they lost the game. And New England did not lose again to the following season. I think they still hold the record. It's like 22 or 23 in a row. And their last loss had been at Washington in Week 4, where they lost the game 20-17, which was the score 20 years later of what Washington did yesterday. So let me get to the roughing call from the game yesterday. This is KJ Henry. It's in the third quarter, and it looks to me like a textbook perfect play. No helmet-to-helmet contact, just KJ Henry rushing the passer and tackling Mac Jones from behind. And they throw the flag, and you go, what? What are you kidding me? That's roughing the passer? I mean, Dick Butkus, who just died recently, he's rolling over in his grave. This is Lawrence Taylor couldn't play in today's game, if you're calling that. That was a routine tackle for Lawrence Taylor, roughing the passer. They said that Henry needed to roll as he was tackling him rather than land on him with his body weight. I don't know how you do that in a split second. So they go to Rivera after the game. Now, one, he doesn't want to get fined, but I think more importantly, Rivera's on the competition committee. So he's part of the group of owners and coaches and general managers that made the decision that a play like that you get roughing. So here's what he was left to say after the game.
They thought it was full body weight, again, we.
Let's hear that again. This is Rivera on the KJ Henry tackle.
They thought it was full body weight, again, we.
Yeah, what do you say? And, I don't know what they're going to do about this, but this is not the football that most of us grew up with. Now, the problem for us, not necessarily for the league, problem for us is the ratings are great. The World Series averaged 9.1 million viewers for the 5 games. The Women's National Championship game, which was played between Iowa and LSU, was a 9-9. So a women's basketball game drew better than the World Series. Routine numbers for the NFL are, they had a Thanksgiving game last year, I think drew 40 million people, something like that. I mean, they own the television. They're not going to drive you away with this, but it's maddening. It's not the football that we grew up with. But I'll tell you something. I was going back and forth with some people on Twitter yesterday. If you go to YouTube and you take a look at the body bag game, the famous game between Philadelphia and Washington in 1990, where they carted off all the quarterbacks and left Brian Mitchell to play quarterback at the end of the game. There were just injury after injury in that game. You watch what happens there. It doesn't look anything like professional football these days. Now, I know they're trying to make it safer. I don't know how you do it. We still have concussions. We still have these helmet-to-helmet hits. We still have players that, after they retire, have long-term effects, including dementia and ALS and everything else that goes along with taking repeated hits to the head. And all we're doing is perception here on what used to be football. And football without tackling, I don't know. I mean, maybe 30 years from now, we'll look back at the Olympics in 2028 and say, well, they played flag football there. Everybody watched and they thought it was great. So that's why we have flag football now instead of tackle football. But when you take out a routine tackle and say that's roughing the passer, it's really hard to think, what it's. I remember this game. This would have been might have been the 2017 opener, maybe 2018. I don't remember, but it was Kansas City playing the Patriots. And Tom Brady was running the football, and he ran for, I think it was a touchdown, because the defender didn't know what to do. If I touch him, it's going to be a penalty. So he just kind of avoided him, and Brady went into the end zone. I don't know where it's going to go from here, but if you watch that play from yesterday, that's as maddening a play as we have, and there's really nothing that anybody can do at the moment other than, I guess, you readdress it in the offseason and say, is there anything we can do about this? Like, we've already heard that they're going to talk about how to redo the kickoff because they've gone too far in the kickoff. It doesn't happen anymore. They thought, well, if we allow this fair catch inside the 25-yard line, that it may, discourage some of the kickoff returns, but we'll still have some. We basically have none. And they thought, well, maybe that kickers would kind of pop it up in the air and kind of force returns. Nah, everybody's just kicking off and kicking it out of the end zone. Most of these kickers, now when you got kickers lining up for routine field goals of 60 yards, kicking it out of the end zone from the 35 is no big deal. They can do that on any play. So we just don't see kickoff returns anymore. They maybe want to bring that back to the game to some degree, and I guess they maybe want to make it so if you sneeze on the quarterback, you can't get a penalty for it. But that's where we are right now. More positive from yesterday is that we got to see the rookie back on the field. Was what I'm trying to say. Not Malcolm Forbes. Why do I keep calling him Malcolm Forbes? Emmanuel Forbes back on the field, and that was a big deal for Washington because he was their first-round pick. He got lit up in back-to-back weeks, and they had to put him on the bench. He barely played in last week's loss to Philadelphia. And let me give you the numbers from yesterday with him back on the field. Let's see. Emmanuel Forbes, and he had put out an Instagram post during the week saying, "I'm back." And he played 47 snaps. He was only in for 5 in last week's loss to Philadelphia. And this is why Rivera feels like maybe he's turned a corner and they can rely on him more.
What you're seeing is, the result of his practice habits right now. He's been working hard. I know the things that they've been working with the defensive backs, and particularly with him, about being disciplined, about doing the little things the right way, and you start to see it. So again, if he can continue to do those things, play within himself, play within the scheme, I think he's got a chance to continue to grow and improve, and hopefully he can grow from here, and he can improve on what he did today.
Yeah, so, good things starting to happen a little bit with the draft class, and including Quan Martin getting the game-clinching interception. I watched some of the Maryland game on Saturday when they played Penn State, and they lost the game 51-15. I like Mike Locksley. I think he's done a good job. But he came into the season talking about competing for a Big Ten championship. And now they've lost 4 in a row, and they are miles and miles away from that. And they've lost to a couple of bad teams. They lost to Illinois in the homecoming game, and they lost at Northwestern. Those teams are not supposed to be in their league. Now, last week, Locksley said, well, we're not, the old Maryland anymore. We're people are taking us seriously. We used to be able to walk in, and they totally would dismiss us, and we'd be able to take advantage of it. We can't do that anymore. Okay, maybe you can buy some of that. Penn State, they never beat Penn State. Last time they beat Penn State in College Park was 1961. They've had a couple of recent wins when Penn State's been going through various things like the pandemic and then the Sandusky incident, which set them back. And Randy Edsall took advantage of that and beat them some years ago at Penn State. And Maryland won in 2020. But otherwise, it's a completely lopsided rivalry, if you want to call it. And Penn State came into College Park with a lot of their fan base. They bought up a lot of the tickets, and they took it to them. They won the game 51-15, leaving Mike Locksley to say afterwards,
you give some credit to Penn State's front. They are, as advertised, a good front, but I don't think they're 51-15 better than us. And so to me, that's where I don't think we played to our potential. And when you don't play to your potential, the first place you look is at me, and I have no problem with owning that. And my job is to get us to play to our potential. We got to learn from this and kind of flush it quickly. We still have an opportunity, a tough road game next week against Nebraska. I don't see anybody in that locker room quitting. We're obviously facing adversity as a program, and the only way to get out of it is to work. And, our guys have continued to give us the work doing Monday through Friday, but we just have not played well or executed on Saturday. And I've got to get and find a way to get us to play next Saturday. So we'll get this flushed. We'll get back to work on Monday, and we'll start preparing to find a way to go to Nebraska and get a road win.
Funny, the odds makers have made Maryland a 2.5-point favorite, which is surprising to me. Nebraska is also 5-4 on the year. They're looking to get bowl eligible. Nebraska, no matter how bad the team is, every seat is filled with red. That's a home field advantage, it would seem. But amazingly, they are underdogs at home against a Maryland team, which hasn't looked good at all lately and has followed this pattern. They are 2-21 at home in November and December since 2011. And their record against ranked Big Ten opponents since joining the conference in 2014 is 0-33. 0-33 against ranked Big Ten opponents, including what happened on Saturday. This is Locksley again on turning the page.
Give Penn State credit. The top 10 team, they came in here and they kicked our butts, and we got outplayed and outcoached. We didn't make plays in any of the 3 phases that we're going to need to make consistently. With that being said, we still sit here with 5 wins with an opportunity to get to 6. It's not going to be an easy task. We've got to, rally the troops. We've got to come, remain really close-knit as a team and understand that the only people that can fix it are us. We can't look for opponents to give us anything. We can't look for help from outside. We've got to just make the decision that, we're going to keep doing the work. We're going to keep showing up. We'll go to Lincoln and put together a good plan and try to figure out a way to get number 6 on the road.
Thing to wonder about, too, not just this season, and if they do manage to win one of the 4, they'll be in some bowl. It's not going to be anywhere near the type of bowl they were thinking about at the beginning of the year. But what happens next year? Because finally, and it's been seemingly forever, the Talia Tagovailoa era is about to end, and he's been terrific, and he even played pretty well against an overmatched opponent, Penn State better team. He was 29 of 39 for 286 yards and 2 touchdowns. He set a career high with 17 consecutive completions to start the game, which tied him with South Carolina's Spencer Rattler for the longest run in college football this year. He's a good quarterback. He's, I think, the second best quarterback they've had next to Boomer Esiason in the last 40 years. But he's leaving. And where's Maryland going to be? Locksley's always been known as a great recruiter. He's sending a bunch of receivers to the pros, some of it off the arm of Tagovailoa. Tagovailoa came with him from Alabama. You know how that worked. So what it's going to be next year and beyond that, who knows? I don't know the length of his contract. I don't think, even if they lose out, even if they wind up with 5 wins for the year, that he's going to be fired. But the patience level is running out. And again, 0-33 against Big Ten opponents since 2014, and also the fact that they are so bad at the end of seasons, that 2-21 at home in November and December since 2000. I wonder how many December games they played. Have they played a December game at home? I don't think so. But anyway, that does not look good for them, and it's a bad look after talking about competing for the Big Ten championship and being basically non-competitive in a game against a team that is capable of competing for the Big Ten championship, and losing games that they should not lose. You know, losing at home to Illinois on homecoming day, and then following that up after a bye where they had a chance to regroup, and losing at Northwestern, which isn't any good. That's a problem. And how long the patience holds up, who knows? I mean, I think a lot of it could be dissipated with what's going to happen with the basketball season, because Maryland is one of those few schools where basketball is a bigger deal than football. But makes for an interesting conversation, and I do like to watch the Terps on Saturday. They got a big noon kickoff this week, but it has been very disappointing since the end of September. October and November, they are winless, and this season has really taken a downturn. Coming up, got Tony tomorrow. We do a little college football as Lauren Druhan will join me from Los Angeles, where they've been sort of the eye of the storm with the firing of the defensive coordinator and the mess that USC is in. We'll talk about that and what's happening down the home stretch as we're getting closer and closer to having playoffs, as we're already into November. And we'll do that tomorrow in addition to other things. Enjoy the rest of this beautiful day. Tony is coming up next, and I'll see you back here tomorrow at 9 a.m.